Hey, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the switch statement, and what the switch statement does, it evaluates an expression, so matching the expression's value to the case clauses, and then executes the statements associated with that case. So let's check it out and show you some examples of that. So I've set up an input area as well as a button. So we'll just ask what time is it, and then we've got a button. So let's make these interactive, these fields. So we'll select the input area as well as the button. So button, document, using query selector, let's select the button element. So we only have the one, so just select that first one. And I'll just do another one for answer and do document and query selector, and we'll select the input. And as we only have one input, it's going to be relatively easy to pick these up. So adding in an event listener to the button. So the event that we're going to be listening for is a click. Whenever it gets clicked, it's going to run a function. And within this function, what do we want to happen? We want to ask the question, so what time is it? And we're going to do an evaluation on the switch statements. We'll have the switch statement in here. And for now, we'll just output whatever the value of answer and whatever the value is that's associated with answer. So if there is no value for the answer, then we're not going to try to provide a solution for it. So we need to make sure that we do have a value within the answer. So let's try that and put in a value. And so now we get the value being output there. So we want to make sure that whatever we're outputting, whatever response is in there, that this is going to be an actual number that we can use. So let's check out and let's grab that value, and we're going to check to see the type that it is. So we'll console log out type of, and this will tell us the data type. So by default within the input, it's going to be a string value. So even though we've got numbers in there, it's still going to be returned back as a string. So what we want to do is we actually want to convert it into a number. So let's set up a variable, and I'll set up a brand new variable, and using number, let's convert the answer value into a number, and then we'll also get the type of for ants. So the original is always going to be a string, so we want to check to see what we're returning back and if it's a number and what type it is. So let's try that one more time. So we've got some letters, so it's a string, the original one's a string, and now it's been turned into a number, and string and number. So with number, we're always turning it into a number, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is an actual value of a number. So if we console log out the value of ants, if it's a string, then it's actually going to be returning back as NaN. So if we've got a string value, it's returned back as NaN, and if we have a number, this is going to still return it back as a number. So the num conversion is going to either check to see if it's a number, and if it's not a number, then it's going to return it back as nan. So that is a variable that we can use, and value representing not a number. So if nan is equal to ants, then that means that console log not a number. And just duplicate that and else and move that in there so it's aligned. I'll get rid of that extra line and I'll just put OK. So let's check to see what gets returned back here. So 44 is OK, whereas what we're returning back, so this is being treated as a number, so non is being returned back as a number, so we're still returning back OK. So it's not checking to see if it's a value of non, it's just checking to see if it's not a number. So let's update this with number, and we'll just check to see if now it's going to return that, and it's still returning back OK. So this is a problem using the number method. So let's use the parse integer, and it's going to return it back as a number value, and that will give us different values there. So let's update this still. So now we're using ER, and it's being returned back as not a number. and now we've got a number, and it's being returned back as a number value. So both parse integer and number, they both are converting it into a number. The difference between parse integer is that if you have a value, and then if you have some numbers, it's going to return it back up to where it sees the end of the number, whereas number is going to return that back separately. And if we do, instead of parse integer, if we use number method in order to do the conversion, and we do 2, it's going to just return it back as not a number. So it's not going to take any of the additional values, whereas parse integer is going to return it back as 2. So there's a difference there, and depending on what you want to use, you can use either the parse integer or the number. So let's use the parse integer in case that there are some other values that are entered in there. So we want to get any of the number values out of that. So now that we've got all of that, and we're still not able to check to see if this is an actual number, if it's a valid number value. So let's take number, and we'll see if this works. As we do need to have a number value for the switch statement, so let's add in a number, and it's coming back not a number, and it's coming back that this is okay. So none is okay. So we need to negate this, and then we should be good to make sure that we're checking to see if not a number, and now we are getting a number, so it is okay. Stay tuned for part number 2 coming up, where we're going to look at switch statements.